Hi everyone, this is Dennis from New Zealand. I've been sharing stories about this country online for about 14 years, in different places, different formats, and now I'm sharing in English as well. Over the years, I've talked about the good, the bad, the controversial, the surprising, the beautiful, and the useful. Sometimes I simply share my feelings or thoughts, but most of the time I do my best to stay objective, at least as much as anyone can. I gather data, analyze it, and show different sides of life in New Zealand. But today's video is different. This one is purely personal, just my subjective thoughts and emotions, without analysis or attempts to explain things logically. If you're looking for facts, breakdowns, or deeper discussions, you'll find plenty of that in my other videos. This one is simply an honest moment about how I feel about the country I've called home for so many years. Recently, an online magazine reached out and asked me to write an article about the pros of New Zealand and then the cons. Naturally, I started doing what I always do, gathering the latest information, recalling everything I've heard over the years from people with different backgrounds and opinions. But as soon as I sent them the draft outline, they told me I'd misunderstood the task. They didn't want a balanced, analytical overview. They wanted my personal pros and cons. I'll be honest, that threw me off a bit. I haven't let go of the reins like that in a long time. Usually, I try to stay objective, skip the emotions, and focus on what's genuinely useful. But I pulled myself together, wrote the piece, and now I'm sharing it with you here as a kind of walk-in video. Don't forget to subscribe to my Telegram channel. I share even more about New Zealand there, and much more often. Alright, let's get started. Everything you'll hear in this video is based purely on my own experience after 14 years of living here. No claims of being perfectly objective, just how it all feels to me. Let's start with nature. There are many beautiful countries in the world, but New Zealand is often called a greatest hits collection. And not without reason. In 2025, about 1 million readers of The Times chose New Zealand as the most attractive country to visit. That says a lot about how diverse and epic the landscapes here are. I can't say I've been to every country on the planet, but I've visited a couple dozen for sure. And nowhere else do I get the same feeling as I do at home. Even after years of traveling around the country, even returning to my favorite places again and again, I still find myself staring at the scenery like it's the first time. I never get tired of it. And somehow, even after 14 years here, the feeling hasn't faded at all. I once tried to make a top 10 list of my favorite places in New Zealand, and honestly, it was almost impossible. I have no idea how you're supposed to leave some places out while keeping others, and even harder, how to put them in any kind of ranked order. I love the beaches here. They're special. There's no extra infrastructure that, at least to me, often ruins the atmosphere. No bars, no lounges, no people selling corn on a stick. It's just pure nature. Maybe that's why the energy there is so strong. It's hard to put it into words. And they're all different. White sand, yellow sand, black volcanic sand, shell beaches, pebble beaches, rocky beaches. Each one is beautiful in its own way. I love traveling around the country by car. For me, it's the best kind of rest and the best kind of entertainment. Just driving, even for long hours. Watching these unbelievable roads, hills, mountains, rivers, and either the ocean or the coastline stretch out beside you. I don't get tired of it at all. If anything, it charges me up. I stop at interesting spots along the way, and I especially love those really remote, unpopular places. The ones with no people, just nature and the elements. Growing up in Siberia, I dreamed, like many others, of living by the sea or the ocean. And I got that life. But about 10 years later, I started feeling pulled toward mountains and lakes instead. Luckily, there is no shortage of those here either. Having grown up near Lake Baikal, I have a special connection to the energy of certain places. I believe in it, I feel it. And in New Zealand, I feel it even more strongly. It's as if the naturally bright colors and the high contrast, the kind that make the grass look almost Photoshop level green even to the naked eye, also make the energy of these places come through more vividly. In recent years, the views of mountain lakes and spending time in those areas have been filling me up again, helping me recharge in these unsettled times. What makes it even better is how accessible all this beauty is. The distances are reasonable. You don't need to fly 10 hours to the other side of the world just to see a different landscape. You just get in the car, drive for 3 or 4 hours, and the amount of variety you see is almost more than your brain can process. Most of the interesting spots have roads or walking tracks leading to them. Everything is close, simple, tidy, well maintained, built with care for people and with real respect for the environment itself. And that never stops impressing me. Another big plus is the mild climate. Spent many years living in Siberia, so I always dreamed of having control over how much snow exists in my life. If I want it, I can go see it. If I don't, it's simply not there. And honestly, I've never been a fan of extreme cold anyway. At the same time, I've also lived in hot countries. Thailand, for example, is way too hot and uncomfortable for me. For a short holiday, you can tolerate the humidity and high temperatures, and if you stay a bit longer, you eventually adapt. But when season after season passes with the same heat, it gets exhausting. I just don't enjoy living only within the reach of the air conditioner and showering several times a day. New Zealand is perfect for me climate-wise. Even within one country, the climate varies a lot. Cities just 2 or 3 hours apart can feel completely different. The North Island is warm and humid, almost subtropical. The South Island is drier and cooler. Snow falls maybe a few times in winter, mostly just enough for pretty photos on social media. Exactly the amount I like. If you find yourself a warm house and pick the climate zone that feels right to you, you can really enjoy the gentle change of seasons without brutal extremes. No deep freezes, no exhausting heat. I've even grown to love autumn here. In Russia, it was my least favorite season, and here it became the one I look forward to most. Not too hot, not too cold, and unbelievably beautiful. I'm pretty sure it's healthier too. When the temperature doesn't swing from -40 to +40 over the year, but stays roughly between +10 and +25, you breathe easier and life just feels better. And by the way, the air is unbelievably fresh. You can almost taste it. Quality of life is a pretty subjective thing. For example, the Numbeo Quality of Life ranking puts New Zealand in 12th place worldwide. But I'm not here to give an objective score. I'm sharing my own feelings and impressions. So don't blame me. For me, it's mostly about how happy people around you seem to be, how well the majority of society feels. And in New Zealand, that part genuinely makes me happy. I can see that the famous friendliness and smiley attitude of New Zealanders isn't just a stereotype. It's the result of the country being developed thoughtfully for many years. People here live well. They have cars, homes, families. They raise their kids, laugh a lot, enjoy life, play sports, go hiking, get into all sorts of hobbies. Most people live a calm, steady, happy life. And yes, buying your own home is getting harder all over the world. But New Zealand still has a pretty good income to property price ratio. Numbeo puts the country at 14th place globally for that. Of course, for an immigrant, it's harder to start building a life from scratch than it is for someone born here. That naturally means more stress and more work. With the pandemic and other major world events, I can't say I fully found my own balance yet, but I clearly see that it's possible. These are my actions, my mistakes, my decisions, and the outcome is on me. And for my kids, it will be even easier. Everything I do now gives them more opportunities and opens more doors. And that thought really warms the soul. Infrastructure. Everything here is built for people, also for animals and plants. These could easily be New Zealand's national slogans. I'd even put them into the anthem, because that's exactly how it feels. And it's true, the roads are smooth and comfortable. I've completely forgotten what it's like to stare at the pavement, trying to dodge potholes. The signs, the rules, the overall conditions for drivers, all great. Cyclists have their own paths and trails, and everywhere you go, there are proper, thoughtful footpaths for pedestrians, including ones that work for all kinds of strollers. In the cities, you'll find everything you need for life. Sports, entertainment, events, services. Sure, it's not like New York or Singapore, where you can get almost anything delivered at any hour of the night. But honestly, you get used to this slower pace. You just start planning things a little earlier. But the best part is that even when you leave the city and head out for a short or long hike, which I absolutely love, everything is still convenient. Good access roads with parking, marked tracks, toilets, well-maintained paths leading to the best viewpoints. It's pure enjoyment without the usual inconveniences. And everything is clean and organized. I still haven't figured out whether it's because people clean up well or because people simply don't litter. Probably the first encourages the second. Whatever the reason, it's really nice. And over time, you get so used to it that you're genuinely shocked by the amount of rubbish you see in some other countries. Remoteness. Back in the day, when I used to say that New Zealand's distance from the Northern Hemisphere was actually a plus, very few people agreed with me. Now, that very distance is why many families are choosing to move here. Yes, it takes longer to fly or sail to us, but in the end, this remoteness works in New Zealand's favor. Big, powerful countries don't really have any reason to bother with our little islands at the edge of the world. There is no economic, resource, or territorial interest for them here. We're far from the major problems of the old world. And at the same time, we don't have crowds of illegal refugees arriving. You can't just cross the ocean on a small boat and make it. There's almost no problematic immigration here. Mostly skilled, professional people who are genuinely needed by the country and the local economy. So every year, I feel more and more confident that this distance is actually to our advantage. Technology and the internet keep us fully connected to the world anyway. And if you do want to travel, paradise is close. 3 hours by plane to the islands of Oceania or to Australia. In 11 hours, you're in Asia, South America, or even the United States, if for some reason you really need to go that far. Safety. This ties in with the previous point. We feel safe here, not only on a global scale, but on a local, everyday level too. According to the World Population Review, New Zealand ranks 3rd in the world on the Global Peace Index. Most local crime is made up of theft and car break-ins. But violent crime, the kind that threatens your health or life, is extremely rare. Walking around feels comfortable and calm. You don't have to worry about your wife or your kids. Over time, you even stop checking your pockets every 5 minutes in crowded places. A habit I carried with me from Moscow for a while. People here are generally very law-abiding. New Zealand is 5th in the world on the Rule of Law Index, and 2nd for racial tolerance, meaning the chance of running into trouble for one reason or another is incredibly low, and that takes one more source of stress off your shoulders. By the way, a few years ago, researchers visited 355 cities in 40 countries and lost 17,303 wallets. They then calculated the return rate to figure out where the most honest people live. New Zealand ranked 8th for wallets without money and 3rd in the world for wallets with money inside. Conditions for children. It's hard for me to imagine a country with better conditions for kids, and it starts right from the very beginning, even before a child is born. You find a midwife, a specialist who supports you throughout the entire pregnancy, guides you, sends you to parenting courses, gives advice, and monitors both the baby's development and the mother's health. Over those months, you build a real bond, even a friendship. And then, this same midwife is the one who delivers your baby, not a stranger, but someone you already trust. And of course, other medical professionals are there too, if needed. Even after birth, the same midwife keeps checking in, helping with the baby's early development, and supporting the mother through the first inevitable challenges. This level of care is priceless. We had 2 little New Zealanders born into our family, and I honestly can't imagine the process being organized any other way. It really feels like a gold standard. Then comes everything kids need for their development. Cozy, well-run kindergartens, clean and fun playgrounds everywhere, endless sports clubs and hobbies. Parents here are truly involved, and thinking about a child's emotional and psychological well-being is completely normal. At pools and playgrounds, you'll often see dads with their kids just as much as moms. It's genuinely heartwarming. Schools in New Zealand are free for anyone with a work visa, residency, or citizenship. Because of my job, I visit schools often, and every time I feel a bit jealous of my own kids, in a good way. I wish I had that growing up. Psychological comfort and social adaptability are the foundation here. Everything else, knowledge, achievements, is built on top of that. And although some parents may disagree with me, I think this is absolutely the right approach. That's why there's almost no bullying here. That's why teachers, who by the way earn decent salaries, actually love their job and care about the kids they teach. They don't get in the way of development. They allow kids to be who they want to be. There's a huge range of sports, music, theatre, creative activities, and I remember being genuinely stunned when I saw what high school students were building and coding in their robotics classes, the music they were playing in fully equipped school recording studios, how they were assembling cross-country motorbikes for national competitions. And now they've added financial literacy, AI education, and digital well-being classes. Honestly, I'm just happy my kids get to study in New Zealand schools. And even after school, I love their approach here. Higher education is paid for everyone. Yes, there are scholarships for strong students, but there's also the option for the student to take a government-backed interest-free loan to cover their tuition, and then repay it gradually once they start working. This takes the pressure off parents and teaches financial responsibility at the same time, something I really wish I had learned earlier, instead of paying a much higher price for it later in life. The most valuable education in the modern world. That's the one you actually learn from. Immigration system. The New Zealand passport is one of the strongest and most sought after in the world, and it's absolutely realistic to get it. To qualify, you need to live in the country for 5 years as a resident. Getting residency in turn is realistic if you have a job in New Zealand. And having a work visa makes finding that job much easier. And you can get a work visa after studying in New Zealand for 1 year or more. That's exactly the path I took myself. And it's the same path most skilled migrants here follow. To me, the whole system is almost perfectly logical. Are you a qualified specialist? Great. If an employer is willing to prove they couldn't find a local candidate and is ready to support your visa, you get your chance. Is it hard to find a job from abroad? Fair enough. Come study, get a post-study work visa, and try again. The country earns money from international education and, at the same time, helps a person become or transform into a specialist who can find a job here. You find one, you stay. And most people succeed. It's not the kind of place where immigrants end up washing floors or dishes for life. In fact, that path won't keep you in the country at all. You need to be a professional in your field. Employers are generally open to hiring foreigners if they have the right skills and can speak English, especially if they already have the correct visa. Because of this system, and because New Zealand mostly attracts people who value a peaceful lifestyle and beautiful nature, society ends up being made up of educated, interesting, like-minded individuals. Clarity, transparency, and honesty from the government when it comes to visas, residency, and citizenship. That's one of the strongest features of the New Zealand immigration system. Society. Speaking of people, I genuinely believe New Zealand is the best country in the world for expats. No matter how hard you try, in many countries you'll never fully become one of them. History, traditions, old social structures, they all play a role. New Zealand, on the other hand, is a young country built by immigrants. Everyone here came from somewhere, some earlier, some later. And people are judged first by who they are, not by their nationality or race. Locals, those born here, coexist naturally and warmly with those who arrived recently. They work together, study together, play sport together, even build families together. People live with mutual respect. And only many years later, when you travel to other countries, you suddenly realize just how high New Zealand's friendliness level really is. Family is valued highly here too. Parents support each other, care for their kids, and often for their friends and neighbors as well. It's a conscious society. People look after the order around them because they truly appreciate it. At the same time, no one gets into your personal space. Nobody lectures you or gives unwanted advice. For me, it's the perfect balance of personal boundaries, kindness, and common sense. And the retirees here? Honestly, they are some of the happiest I've ever seen. Sitting in cafes with their coffees, driving nice cars, staying active, chatting with everyone. They're friendly, smart, well-read, curious. They will like it to grow up during the country's most prosperous years, and you can really see it in the way they live now. Long lives and happy ones. Food. Everything tastes amazing here. I've always had a pretty simple attitude toward food. More like fuel I need to function. I rarely enjoyed meals, mostly as an exception. Cooking just wasn't a big thing in my family when I was growing up. But the first time I tried a New Zealand steak with the right local red wine they recommended, that was my first true gastronomic shock. And the burgers here? My God. I'm drooling just writing about them. Everything is juicy, fresh, and ridiculously delicious. Supermarket food is great quality too. Again, you get used to it and start treating it as normal. But then you travel abroad and suddenly realize how much you miss what you have at home. On top of that, there are farmers markets, small local shops, fresh produce stands, whatever you like. For a few years, our family tried going meat-free, and it actually worked, and we enjoyed it. But eventually, we brought meat dishes back into our lives from time to time. Not often, but when we really wanted them. Because honestly, giving up this level of quality feels almost like a crime. Sometimes I hear people say New Zealand is a boring country, and I will never understand that. That level of misunderstanding should practically be illegal. The opportunities for leisure here are incredible, especially if you love spending time outdoors. Water sports, air sports, land sports, all kinds of equipment, competitions, take your pick. And the hiking here? Honestly, the best in the world in terms of quality and beauty. But even if you're more into cultural activities, there's plenty to do. Big artists fly here on tour, there are festivals, and there's always some really decent live music happening somewhere. There are theatres, orchestras, ballet, not as often or as much as in huge capitals, but they exist and they're genuinely good. In short, if you manage to be bored in New Zealand, then you were probably a very boring person to begin with. And lastly, the language. Like most people back home, I studied English at school, so I didn't have to dive into a completely new language, which saved me a lot of time and a lot of nerves. English opens up so many opportunities, communicating with people all over the world, watching films and reading books in the original, studying modern things without waiting for translations. Once you get used to consuming content in English, watching or reading anything dubbed becomes almost impossible. It just feels wrong. And honestly, it's simply convenient that English is the main language of communication here. New Zealand definitely has its downsides, including some that affect me personally. But that's a topic for another separate video. Still, I consider this country the best place to live in my understanding, both as a combination of all factors and in most categories individually. And I love it even more when I travel abroad from time to time. You start appreciating what you have around you. Although, to be fair, I've appreciated it from the very first day I stepped on this land. It never stops surprising me, charging me, delighting me, and making me fall in love again and again. New Zealand is home.